All right. Firstly, I want to thank you for Professor Wang Heng and also Sable for invitation. It is my great pleasure to give a speech in this wonderful conference and see many old friends here. Okay, it's on the desktop. Thank you so much. Can I use the full screen? Okay, perfect. All right, so. Yeah, so the topic for today's presentation is from shadow banking to FinTech in China, the new approach for financial development in China. How to?
On the left.
Okay, yeah.
On the left-hand side? On the left-hand side? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I would like to firstly introduce a very famous landmark in Italy. This is a very famous landmark in Italy. It is a very narrow path in the South Italy. And actually this is very famous because there is a famous story about the battle in the Chaldean Force. And in this place, the Senate army has defeated the Roman army in this famous place. Okay, so this place become very famous because it is very narrow and necessary path in Italian. All right. So there is a very famous statement by Karl Marx in his response to Engels in 1875. It says that it raised a very famous question whether it is possible to incorporate all the necessary positive equations of the capitalist system without passing through its causative force. So I think these statements can raise a question also to the emerging market. Can the emerging market has the development without passing through the painful and crisis stage? Okay, so I just use this theory for my research question, and I try to answer the question, can an under a development financial market deepen the cutting force? And there is three sub research questions for my research. The first one is why emerging market need to deepen. I will explore its motivation. And the second one is how it can deepen the cutting force. I will explore the approach used by the emerging market. And the last question is how we can assess its approach. So I just use China as the case. Okay? So the first one, I will explore the motivation behind Chinese deepening the cutting force. Actually, China is facing several conflicts. The first one is coming from its status in international trade. As we know, currently China is the international trade giant. Heng is the expert in this area, so he knows very well. And however, China is little player in international financial market. It is not a leading market in China in international financial market because it has very small size and low cross-border connected with the other markets. And the second conflict faced by China is that it has very high-speed economy but very low efficient financial supply channels. Okay, and also we can find that in China we can see very wild growth in the shadow financial market, but also very weak regulation powers to control the risk in this market. And number 4 is that we can find that China is advanced in technology. However, it is very lagged in financial market. Okay, and the last conflict is that China is facing the very significant questions of financial exclusion. So there is a need of financial inclusion in China. Okay, so that is the motivation. And the first one is the international status by China. China is an international trade giant. So as exchange surprise that China realized that the negative spillover effects caused by the U.S. Domination in the global financial market, especially the impact of the financial crisis. So after the financial crisis, we can find that China called for the responsive stakeholder in the global financial market. And the second one is that because China is not leading market in the financial, international financial market, so we can find that there is very a minimum success in changing the existing financial architecture in the international market. Okay, and the second one is that, as I mentioned, that there is a conflict between the economic and financial supply. So we can find that there is two different financial markets in Chinese. The first one is that we can find a mainstream market. I call it a hypothetical market, and this market is very low efficient. Okay, and because it is very low efficient and it lack of many diversified financial instruments in this market, so we can find a second market. I call it a shadow market. Okay, and this market is real market-oriented market. It is very vital, but it is also wealth growth, a shadow market without many efficient regulation in this market. So we can find it because China is advanced in technology and lagging in the financial market. So we can find that in the recent year, there is a new market come out. I call it the new brand market, which is the FinTech market. Okay, so the last conference is why I mentioned that we have financial exclusion and the need for financial inclusion in China. I use this picture to show you the credit market in China. We can see that there is only a very small portion of the enterprise. They are the large and medium-sized enterprise, and also the rich and middle-class people can access to the mainstream finance in China. Okay, so there is very large percentage for the small and micro-sized enterprise, and also the lower-class people. They cannot access to the mainstream finance. So the only way they can access to the finance is the shadow banking or shadow finance market. Okay, so that is why we can see that in China, they use a very different approach for financial development, which is a shadow banking approach. And this is data from FSB. It shows that in the past few years, there is very quickly growth in Chinese shadow banking market. And we can find that the Beijing and also a Chinese authority has changed their attitudes towards shadow banking. At the very beginning in 2014, we can find that the governments show more natural and attitudes towards shadow banking, and they recognized there is some merits by shadow banking by providing the alternative financial channel for the private enterprise. However, the attitudes has been changed in the recent year, and we can find that from the legal documents by PBOC, and they say that shadow banking is a possible source of systematic risk and also a regulatory arbitrage. Okay, so we can find that the attitude has been changed. However, if we want to explore why we have a so large shadow banking market in China, and why China rely on the non-banking approach for financial development, we need to understand the origin of shadow banking, and we can explore the origins from the monetary perspective. I also use the theory of money and credit to explore the origin. We can find that the shadow banking can be explained from the monetary perspective, because not only the banks provide the money, but also the other financial institutions can provide the money not connected with banks. And the other scholars also call it the shadow money. And also, the central banks cannot precisely control all the aggregate money supplies, and the banks the banks and the other financial institutions always has incentive to lend out more money, which is more than their legally required minimum ratios. And also, the shadow banking in China is come out from the regulatory boundary, because the capital will always go to the less regulated area, named the heavy regulatory area. And also, as Ross mentioned in his presentation, that in China we are facing the financial repression. Therefore, the investors cannot get the reasonable return from their investment, and also the small size private enterprise are exclusive from the mainstream finance for funding. And shadow banking can be regarded as adaptive efficiency because it's a response to the inefficient existing legal institutions in this market. And the shadow banking also coming from the legal origins because currently the law in China is incomplete and also ossified. And our regulation system is also very inefficient because they usually use the post-ante response instead of its ante response to the financial market. So the policy implication for Chinese shadow banking is that the shadow banking is actually driven not only by the regulatory arbitrage, but also driven by the genuine market demand. Okay, so we need to make use of shadow banking to maximize its benefits and also to reduce its risk. And to solve the shadow banking problem, we should not only deal it with institutional perspective, but also from the monetary perspective. Okay, and because Beijing has a very negative attitude towards shadow banking in the recent year, so we can find that it has shifted to a new model, which is FinTech model. And some international scholars also notice about this shift to the FinTech from shadow banking. And why we have such a shift? We can explore the shift from many external and internal factors. The first one is coming from the external factors, because as I mentioned that China has a very minor success in changing the existing international architecture. And also China has been concerned to be impacted by the irresponsible dominance in the financial system. But however, as a very giant in international trade, China has a very strong desire to supporting its financial framework for the trade and investment. So we can find that China has many efforts in the past years. For example, the AIIB, the RMB internationalization, and also the One Belt, One Road strategy. And China didn't want to only be the receiver for the international rule, but it also want to be built for the international framework for the financial market. However, the question is that, do China has already rules to upload to the international system? The answer may be no for the traditional banking system. So China has another strategy to find a new area, a new strategy in the FinTech. Okay. And the external factors. The emergence of FinTech in China has financial inclusion driving because we have very long tail investors and clients in China, which are the outlier area for the traditional banking. Okay, so the bank doesn't have any interest for those clients and investors. However, the other new institutions, they have interest in them. Okay, so that is why we have the FinTech emerging in China. And also we have regulatory driving. The FinTechs can help the regulators to better observe the non-banking financial sectors. Okay, so that is very important reason why the regulator supporting the FinTech in China. And also, as Professor Doug Anna mentioned, that the FinTech can bring the shadow banking to light to the regulator. So that is why they are supporting the FinTech development in China. Okay, and we also have the technology driving in China. As I said, we are advanced in technology and very weak infrastructure in financial market. And our law doesn't have many limitations in privacy and the other tech ethic requirements. So that is why we still have very relaxed, environmental for FinTech development in China. And our culture is more trust in technology because we believe technology is more reliable or more neutral than the human being. And the last one is the market power, because in China, we know the BAT, they are giant company in China, so they are push the governments to development of FinTech market in China. Okay, So latest technology driving, and we can see that we have many different product versions for fintechs in China, the P2P, the online money market hub, such as Yuebao, the internet micronote, and also we are very development in the third-party payment, the mobile payment. And we also, attempt to use the AI in more financial service, such as robo-advisor in investment instruments and also banking. And as we have discussed today, the central bank's digital currency is also new emerging area in the fintechs in China. And we also have many institutions, participate in this market. We can find private participants from the cooperation between the traditional banks and the new technology company, and also the financial holding company, which is controlled by the technology company, such as Alibaba, Jingdong, and also Tencent. And many traditional shadow banking institutions also participate in the new fintech market, such as the money market house, the low company, they have moved offline business online. And the central banks also participate in the digital currency research. Okay, so we have many achievements. China is currently regarded as leading in some fintech areas, such as the mobile payment, according to the economics the report in 2017, and also according to the Ant Finance report, which is the biggest fintech company in China. About 0.7 billion Chinese people are using the Alipay. Okay, that is only one kind of mobile payment in China. And Alipay is also served in more than 2,000 states and also regions all around the world. And the central bank's currency is also under the environmental experiment. Also, if it becomes successful, China may be one of the first countries to issue the CBDC in the world. And it also increased the financial inclusion. It serves the tail clients, which has very limited access to the mainstream finance, not only in China, but also in developing countries. For example, the Ant Finance company has held Thailand to development patent. Okay, so they provide the payment system to the people which cannot access to the banking service. Okay, it increased the efficiency in the financial market. It also enhanced the regulatory control. It made many transactions online, so it is more transparent to the regulator, and also the payments online, and the registration online, and it made many financial services become more and more standardized. And it also improving the RegTech regulation tech in China. And yeah, so we can find that there is many benefits for fintech in China, but we are also facing the problem because many of the fintech business is connected with the existing shadow banking business, and some of them is not only doing online but also doing offline. Okay, so it means that their technology is not so mature enough to overcome many existing problems. Okay, and tech innovation is the most solid basis for supporting the deregulation. However, the tech may also be used as the well of fraud, misrepresentation, and also arbitrage in financial market. So we can find that the regulator also have changed their attitudes towards different kind of products for the fintechs in China. And yeah, I want to read all the slides because I have run out of time. Okay, so a very short question. The shift of fintechs is representing the hope of emerging market to find a shortcut to leaping over the cutting force. And the shift to the fintechs is also adaptive efficiency, which is driving by the market power and also the technology power. And the regulators may be more prefer the fintechs than the shadow banking, since the culture of more trusting in the technology and also more easy to control the technology. However, the fintech, the RegTech is much far lagging than the fintech, which cannot efficiently control the systematic risk. And also, the FinTech is bottom up, but the destination for regulation is to have more top-down design and more stringent control, which may be a constraint with the innovation. And how to balance innovation and control, that is the big question facing by Chinese regulator. And the last point is that China is leading in FinTech in some area, but there is still a long way for China to be the standard makers in the international market. So that is very rough idea for my research. Okay, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Simin. We're going to take one question now, but Simin and Ross will be on a panel a bit later on, so there'll be plenty of chance to ask further questions. Anybody with a quick question for now? Yes.
So my question is like Alipay now has been extended to Australia. So, but I'm not sure how many Australian users who actually use Alipay because it's mainly used by the Chinese overseas students. So I'm not sure, like, would that be a part of regulation under the central bank? Like a FinTech overseas, something like that.
Yeah, I attempt to answer this question because I'm not very sure about whether the Alipay is under the regulation of central banks. But I mean, all of its business in China is under the regulation by central banks, and it has the special license for, we call it the third-party license for Alipay in China. I mean, at the very beginning, it is just regarded as a tech innovation, so there is not very heavy regulation on it. But I mean, in the very recently, I mean, central banks has very strict regulation on each payment. So each payment has, I mean, maximize has the how to say ceiling amount for each payment. Okay, so just to protect the clients, but I'm not quite sure about the requirements in the Australia. So yeah. Very short answer to a question. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And if I can ask Heng to come up and